All right, I guess we're ready to get started. Welcome to the post-coffee break session. And we have with us today Seamus Johnston and Xavier Antoviaque. And they're going to talk to us about a contributor's journey. So let's give them a hand.
Hi, I'm Seamus, here with Xavier to talk about a contributor's journey. And I'm going to pass it over to Xavier to start us off.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Xavier Antoviaque, and we are both from OpenCraft. And it's, like Seamus mentioned, we'll be trying to talk about a few users and contributors' journeys. So in that first part, that's what I'm going to focus on, and then I'll pass it on to Seamus afterwards. So to start this off, I wanted to start with the story of one specific contribution, two actually in particular. So because the whole thing that brings us here together, edX, is actually started now almost 6 years ago in Boston. So that was actually the very first contribution to edX. The one that happened in the edX office, and that actually gave birth to everything that we are doing today. So, second part of that contribution was actually happening pretty much at the same time, not too far from here in Stanford, where actually the release of edX was concomitant to Stanford joining the edX community, and one of the conditions that they put to join the edX community was that the code would be contributed and would become open source. So that was always a goal for edX, but yeah, this one hasn't loaded. But that was kind of Stanford's first contribution to make sure that edX would become open source. Then, at the same time, in a different place, different environment, in Brazil, as it happens, someone's life was about to be quite changed by this. My life, actually. I was, at that moment, in this garden, not really doing something specific at the time with MOOCs, except for following a few. And when I saw that edX was being released as open source, I was, that's great. I've followed some courses there. That gives me an occasion to give some of it back to the community. So I joined the project, looked at it, and that's where the actual first community contribution and first merge pull request happened in this specific garden. And that kind of changed my life. So among other stories here, that one is, of course, a little bit special to me. So what I wanted to do also in this talk is to get down a little bit of our ivory tower and try to look at different experience from users, from pedagogical staff, from developers, from a variety of contributors, basically, who all contribute in their own way to the community, to try to give some voices to maybe some people who don't get a chance to attend this conference, so that we look a little bit at how they came to it, what they did, and how they all contribute in some way to the community. So one of the first example, so we had a series of interviews with different people from the community, and one of them was Charlotte from the Kennedy School, and she runs an initiative which is actually quite interesting by itself. It's a course that appeals to civil servants, which teach everyone how to use more data-oriented analysis in their daily life and daily work, especially, to encourage to take more data-driven decisions. So the whole idea is that if the decisions are more driven by data, they will be better, and that will improve the life of others. And actually, that's something that regularly happens. It's one of many initiatives on OpenEdX, but it has quite an amazing impact, I find. So some different example of the learners that benefited from that. So we have Nazir, who has been using tax data to analyze the tax filing compliance ratio and try to sort out some of the fraud and give some statistic about this. There is Malik, who has done a study to understand hospital management problems, also following that course. And we have Vardag, who used data to increase the efficiency of deliveries in the postal service. Nazir, that has also been using data about previous pay in different areas of the government to design a pay increase for the Pakistani Ministry of Commerce. And all of those, the decision would probably have happened without that course, without OpenEdX. But it happened in a different way and hopefully in a better way. There was an example in terms of contribution for Charlotte that was interesting, is that at some point she needed to add a new type of question. So during the course, they ask the students what are the areas where they could apply, where they have to take decision, what are the areas where they have data, and etc. And she wanted to reuse that in a different part of the course after getting the knowledge to remind the learner of where they could apply that knowledge. And that wasn't a feature that was part of OpenEdX at that point. So she started looking in the community if that was something that somebody else was thinking of, and etc. And found that actually another Harvard school, the Graduate School of Education, had needed exactly that feature a few months before them, and had actually contributed that feature and made it available to everyone else as an next block. And as a result of that, because someone else in the community thought of contributing it, of leaving it out in the open, because someone else replied to her to her question and pointed out to the right place, the life of those people ended up being impacted maybe in slightly better way. It's not a lot, of course, but a lot of little things like that really add up. So yes, even if she's really more on the educational side of things, like the contribution aspect of it really played a role here. Then next we talked to some students of the MIT MicroMasters. Here this is Mark, who fits, let's say, the profile of a learner who just wants access to the knowledge. He wants it as fast as possible, something of high quality that would give him the way to operationalize it. And it's something that is found on edX that he's been pretty happy with. He's managed to work and finish the MicroMaster. On the other side, he decided to not necessarily push it any further. It's not something that he looks really for the degree itself. It doesn't necessarily contribute much. But still, when he saw that we wanted to talk to a few users, he decided to contribute also and give us a few comments, which is also a form of contribution. Another example also from the MicroMasters is the example of Lance, who is, so he's part of the supply chain MicroMaster. He's actually an existing professional from that branch. So that's the reason why he joined it in the first place, is that he wanted to broaden his perspective about supply chain management, try to see it from different roles rather than just the role he has been hired to do it in the past. And also, and I would say maybe mainly that opened him some doors that he would never thought would be open, because by completing the MicroMaster, he was invited to join MIT to finish the degree in campus. And like he said it himself, without that door, he would never have even thought of applying to MIT, wouldn't have thought of having a chance to do that. And again, it's maybe a small thing, but like the work that we all do created something very different in his life. And also interestingly, now that he's actually on the MIT campus, he also gives back. He participates as a beta tester to a number of courses. He's also a TA for a few of the online courses. So it's also interesting to see that pattern, a little bit like the one I had before of feeling, okay, I've received so much from others, we were not asking anything, I'm going to give it back. Another person involved in MicroMasters that maybe some of you might know, Julian, is actually a lecturer, part of the MIT physics department, and he's managing a lot of the courses around MITx. And his example is also really interesting, I find, because he is definitely on the teacher educational side, but one of the things that he has repeatedly used through his time in this position is his ability to contribute some small changes. So for example, he had one or like several of his students asking for the possibility of printing some of the exercise that they had in the course. And at the time, it was not really possible. Like you had a bunch of garbage being printed out on top of everything, so they couldn't do that. So instead of saying, "Oh, edX, that's horrible. You should fix it," and that's terrible, we should be able to print. He said, "Okay, I can fix that. I can go there and make it printable." He contributed that to the main version of OpenEdX, and OpenEdX pages became something printable. And he has done that repeatedly through time, whenever, like, not necessarily big things, but sometimes when something really gets in the way that's specific, that will really help his students, he will step out and actually do it on his own. Another example, which you might also know, Regis, is, I would say, more like the really developer type of contributor. He's been part of the OpenEdX community for a while. Actually, he started by working at Fun. I was a developer there. And after quitting his job there, he still continued being involved in the OpenEdX community and contributed a few things over time, like tutor that he was talking about earlier today. And there is an example that I find really interesting, is that at some point, someone contacted and posted on Twitter, was really frustrated by one of the features of one of the bugs on OpenEdX. I said, if someone can fix this, I will do anything. And it turned out that Regis really liked peanut butter, so he decided, yes, if you can give me 5 kilos of this specific peanut butter, that has to be really this one, then I will fix it. And he did, actually. So, and he actually, for the story, ended up receiving the peanut butter, so those things really, really exist. And I find that really interesting, because we're in a case where maybe when that person von Rodolphe posted that initially, he probably didn't think it would end up being solved. But just because of the community, just because like he did that small contribution in a way, which is talk about it, to ask around if someone could help him with this. That contribution ended up giving another contribution, and the problem ended up being fixed without edX being involved at any point with that, except for maybe merging the pull request. So yeah, there are, like, we often think that contributing is like writing code and sending it, but sometimes it's offering peanut butter. So yeah. And another example to also give, even on the technical side, the type of variety that there can be with contributions. Pierre is, he doesn't necessarily contribute code, but because he has to manage OpenEdX instances, whenever there is a new version arriving, like Iron Mood last week, he's always there to help testing it, to be like, okay, like I've tested it with our different courses, I've looked at it, reporting some bugs, sometimes fixing them, but not necessarily. And this work is also invaluable. And he didn't even think this was something valuable and ended up being really surprised a few years ago in Madrid when he was named one of the key contributors of OpenEdX, because actually what he didn't realize that was filling a huge need within the community, which is that when there is a release that it works. And we all have him to thank for that. Again, without any code. And one last contributor, maybe the most important, you. So yeah, there are always things that we find frustrating that we want to see differently in the community, in the code base, or anything related with OpenEdX. And we often think that we can't do much about this, but there is often something that you can do about it. So yeah, like through all of those examples, we have like lots of very varying degrees of experience, of origins, technical, non-technical, really involved in the community, really in the back, just using their own, it for their own learning. But at the end, we are all part of that same community, the OpenEdX community, and maybe more broadly behind the OpenEdX community, the community of people who care about learning, of improving it, or for others and for ourselves. And that part at the end is one of the core strengths of open source project and of OpenEdX in particular. And that's something that we need to remember whenever we are faced with a problem, or even if we have a bad day with OpenEdX, we all get frustrated with it at some point, is that we are still all contributing to that. All our actions will have an impact on others at some point, and a lot of people that we don't even suspect will benefit from it. So yeah, again, open source has the unique ability of like reconciling the needs of very different actors. So whenever there is something that you can contribute, don't assume that nobody else will be interested. That will really end up benefiting at some point, even if it's really incrementally. And I would insist on that a little bit, because we sometimes see OpenEdX as something developed by edX. Like a number of times where I hear people saying, edX should do this, edX should do that, and etc. It's not edX project, it's our project. And if something doesn't work in it, or if something should be better, we should be doing something about it, even if that means just offering peanut butter to someone else. But yeah, we should all feel concerned by that. And yeah, that actually applies whether you're technically minded or not. How often do I hear, yeah, but I don't know how to code. So there are lots of things that can be done that are not related to code, and that actually Seamus is going to talk about now.
Yes, I am going to talk specifically about non-technical, semi-technical users, which I've heard as a theme running through the conference so far, and I'm very happy about that. There's a lot of smart people in education who don't know how to code, or they know a little HTML or a little R or something like that. And sometimes we want to contribute to projects, but the fences to get to contributing feel like they're 1,000 miles high. And if you fall into that bucket, your contributions are still very needed. And if you don't fall into that bucket, I still want you to listen to me and take what I have to say to the people you know who do. There's documentation, volunteer management, legal and tax work, press relations. Some open source teams don't realize at the start how many skills it takes to make a project sustainable. Social media accounts, sell branded gear, donation campaigns. edX does, of course. OpenEdX has been open source since 2013. Website copy editing, graphic design, translating texts, user experience, accessibility testing. That guy who stood up this morning to say, I have experience with helping blind users, I'm going to track him down. I'm really curious to hear what he has to say. That's not related to my talk, sorry. Triage pull requests, groom issues, arbitrate disputes, and handle code of conduct violations, guide newbies, strategic planning, bake bread and cookies. Before I had the privilege of coming to work for OpenCraft, I was involved with an open source project that had 600 active volunteers. Guess how many of them were coders? Less than 10. Less than 10 people. And obviously, the less of everything else that the coders have to do, the more that they can code. So, if you can't read a stack trace, or if you don't even know what one is, there's still a lot of things that you can do to help. So this is just a few small ideas of low-hanging fruit for getting yourself in the door. You can update all the first contact documentation to be a little bit more human-readable, and submit that as a pull request, and you can ask for help with that. You can look for non-technical issues in the Jira issue tracker, and you can ask for help if you can't find any. Good technical writers are rarer than good engineers. If you can write, please get involved. Edit the contributing markdown document to have a section for non-coders that says what needs done and who to contact with it. And these are a great way of finding out how welcoming a project is, because even if your first idea of contributing gets shot down, if they want new people, they'll probably give you something else to do, like, no, please don't mess with the tags in the issue tracker, but hey, we do need more people to watch the mailing list. Or what if you already know exactly what you want to do to contribute, but all of the senior coders are too busy coding to help out, and you can't get started because, this is still really all Greek to you, even if you have some programming chops. It's very easy to walk away at this point. But I would really encourage you not to. If there's not enough people to help you contribute, why not help get more people? Put yourself in charge of recruiting. It might be a lot of people. Go recruit in the places where the software is used. Recruit in batches evenly throughout the year. This is something that the old project I was talking about did very successfully. Or it could be just, getting your buddy. And let people know, if you find the people you don't want to contribute, let them know nicely and quickly, A human life is approximately 600,000 hours, and every one of them is precious. Ask yourself why you volunteer. If I were an economist and not a programmer, I'd call it a gift economy. Just because no money is changing hands doesn't mean people don't expect to get paid. In friendship or recognition, access to opportunities, or peanut butter, or many other things besides. OpenEdX is wonderful for me because As a kid, I dreamed of going to the very universities that I now help people to access. Don't be an unpaid internship, and don't give your time to projects like that. Free software is and always has been about community. That community is getting bigger and more global every year. The most important thing to know about that diversity is that you don't know what you don't know. So adopt a strong code of conduct that welcomes people. Not everybody is going to be happy all of the time, but everybody should feel safe and everybody should know what to expect.
All right, so to conclude, I'd like to take you back where we started, in that garden where I did my first contribution, the first community contribution. Like the feeling that I had that day when I was contributing it is still very vivid in my memory, like 6 years after. I still remember the garden, I still remember the color of what I was doing, the light, the dog that was coming to bother me when I was trying to get that done. And I think that feeling hasn't really left me through all those years. And I on the contrary, it has been extended through the thousands of contributions that have been done in the meantime. A lot of them are not mine anymore. That's the other people in the OpenCraft team that do it. But it's really something that at the end of the day, when I finish it, even if I had an horrible day that I had to deal with a lot of fires and etc., that still stays with me. There is still a satisfaction that I don't think I had in any of my jobs before, which is to find that my work had meaning, that my work impacted others. And I don't think I would have that feeling if the work that we are doing wasn't being contributed, wasn't at the end part of the community and of the other instance and used by other people. So yeah, like if you already contribute, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you don't yet, I would definitely encourage you. You will probably remember that feeling and like in a special way. And at the end, I think that's what really matters is how you feel about the work that you're doing and how it impacts the rest of the community. So yeah, if you get to that point, like go to a nice place because that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And that's it for us.
All right, thanks, guys. That was great. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, Beth.
Are there any, let's say, dark corners of the code base that people just don't really venture into and that maybe you guys have never even ventured into? And I don't mean that disparagingly, like, oh, don't go there, but like just they're not interesting to people. They don't need extension or expansion, and they just aren't really loved, right? They're not part of what is happening actively on the code base. Are there areas of the code that are like that?
Oh my, lots of them, you have no idea. Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. The OpenEdX code base is huge. There are lots of areas that have been done early on where maybe at the point the standards were not exactly the way they are right now, or the deadlines were a little bit too tight. So yes, there are like, if you start with the code base, yeah, be mindful of that, actually, that maybe the area that you're starting with, it may be one of those less loved ones. And you might want to make sure that you end up with something that is reasonably clean and etc. But at the same time, I would say even if you end up being interested by a part of the code base that is not very loved or hasn't received any love, well, maybe it was just looking for someone to adopt. Maybe it is you. And And maybe because nobody else cares, you will have a lot of freedom. And especially if you improve it, that might actually be sometimes a good area to start with.
Yeah, we got one in the corner.
So I'm not a coder. Maybe
Great.
this will go on tape. But
That's a quality, actually, not
I'm
something.
super interested in open source and giving back to our culture and things like that. I'm starting to wonder, and I wonder if you have any insight on this, at what point, with so many projects that are available and so many things I can invest in over time, are we too saturated and is there too much open code in the world in general? You know, I could go to Wikipedia 10 hours a week, or I could come to open edX 10 hours a week, or I could go volunteer at the Relay for Life or whatever. Just from your experience, are you seeing any kind of fatigue from volunteers?
I mean, there is definitely way too many places where you can contribute, and you won't be able to contribute to all the projects that you like. But I mean, I think that's more of a feature than a bug, I would say here, because that means that you can choose. Actually, the parallel for me is the choice in MOOCs. Like you have hundreds, thousands of MOOCs, if not more. And actually, that sounds like something almost bad in a way, because you need to figure out which one you like and etc. But when I compare with the experience I had going through school, college, and etc., where I didn't really have choices, I just was stuck with the boring professor with all his mannerisms and etc. And I would have liked to be able to choose it. So yeah, when I go and then choose my MOOC, I go through maybe 10 of them, and most of them are like, no, I don't want to see that guy all the time or that woman. But some of them, I will stick with them. Something will work. And so I guess if you already contribute to some of them, it's already great. You don't need to contribute to all of them.
I think based on that comment, I have a totally different view, because when you look at the current learners, unlike me, in my generation, where we were passive learners and sit down and whatever information was given to us, eat it. I think it's the current, the millennials do not want to be an active participant. They want to contribute. They cannot, I think they're not just doing it as an altruistic fashion. They want to do it because to them that is part of the learning experience. So I think we see that more to become more of the norm rather than exception. So I think that's why this whole approach of the open source has really taken hold, and I think we're going to see, and then the way this is happening, I don't think there is a stop to it.
I completely agree with that. And actually, I think I'd like to see more actual courses take advantage of that. Because often, in a lot of the MOOC courses, you have on one side the educator staff and maybe the professor, and on the other side the students, maybe with the TAs in the middle. But actually, there is really an opportunity with such a community to contribute and to have people feeling, and maybe not just like improving the software of the course and etc., but the course content itself. And I would like to see more open source-like ways of running courses. I think that would be awesome. And to your point, I think it would be much more engaging for the audience.
So before coming and working for edX, I had always wanted to contribute to open source, right? As a developer, I thought it was great. It seemed really interesting, but the intimidation was real. It was just so great. It was this daunting feat of getting that first PR open, getting that first commit, until I ended up working for edX, and it became just where everything I do goes now. But so it sounds like that wasn't an intimidation factor, or maybe it was for you, but how do we make it less of an intimidation factor for people?
I mean, that's really difficult. You said that wasn't an intimidation factor. I was peeing my pants that first day in that garden. Like, that was like, I was terrified, because it was like all the people that I admire and respect, and I was going to give them something. What are they going to say? Are they going to say, no, that's shit? I mean, so that imposter syndrome, I think we all go through that. Actually, at OpenCraft, because everyone has to go through like an onboarding process where we start contributing, everyone has the imposter syndrome, to the point where in our course, that the one that you see on the first day, there is a whole section dedicated to that. You will feel like an imposter, that you don't belong here, and etc. So I think our approach with this has been that, to actually say it, like it will happen no matter what, because we contribute to things we care about, to things that we respect. So of course we'll be a little bit maybe shy at the beginning and think we are not completely worth it. But just by mentioning that everyone feels like that, even all the people that we respect and that actually are going to review that went through that. Actually, the feedback we had from people was that it was really helpful. They were like, oh, I'm not the only one feeling that way. And that feels great.
Any other questions? If not, actually, I had a question for Seamus, actually. You mentioned that you were part of another open source community before you started becoming more involved in the Open edX community. Are there any ways in which that community operated that you wish the Open edX community would start to adopt that you found were really successful?
A highly political question. I think that the very key difference is that project, which is a highly successful project by metrics other than just volunteers, has to rely 100% on its user base for funding. It cannot get any grants. So there's I think there's a heavy incentive to go out into the community and be like, hey, we're humans. We're actual human beings. You can talk to us. You can give us money. And yeah, if edX made a little bit stronger effort to just go out and talk to the students and to the teachers, the professors. I know it's hard because everybody is busy, but I think that would go a long way, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, great. Thanks a lot, guys.